All right, so you should have something that looks like this. I'm moving my camera around by accident here. And if we go out of this view, the camera view that I had to show you to set up real quick last week, if we go back to, let's say, perspective, or let's go to the front view, and we take a look at it in our window here, we'll see that we have the environment that I was talking about building. Some of them are just boxes, some of them are built out of pieces. One of the things that I do when I'm building in two-sided geometry and I want to get a feel for a hallway and stuff after I've done all the measurements is I'll come into the object properties with that selected and I'll make sure I turn off backface call, because backface call is this. So now I can't see through it anymore. So once I break off half of the box, like if I just deleted all of these faces except for the top, this face that's underneath, then I would say backface call. Here, I'll do that right now just to show you what I mean. I'm going to keep this one actually. It's still left to measurements, so I can check my measurements on everything. I have a few things like that, like the door I think is still that way. This is still that way. This cabinet is still that way. The window is still that way. I think this back wall is still that way. Anyway, so this is back when I was working on it, doing that part, not for the next part that I'm going to show you. So I'm going to turn this back off. So the next thing I did is, because if we look at this, it looks like kind of crap and we can't get a real feel if that's right or anything. So what we need is lighting. So we'll come back up to the top view here real quick. And before we do lighting, what I can do is mess with my viewports. Now I've shown you how you can go to the standard widescreen, which was this before. So you have this, and then we can go back to the full and whatever. But there's also another option that you can go to that's called, here, wrong one, configure viewports. And then I'm going to do this 2x2 and say apply and say OK. So what I do when I do this is I'll drag half of the viewport all the way over to here, and then I'll push C in this viewport. So now I have the camera view over here, and then I'll be working over in this area. Okay. So what I did next is I put some lights in here so I could see just what I want it to feel like it felt right. I'm not expecting it to be the perfect lights, and I'm not doing a full lighting set inside of Max because it doesn't transfer well, and there's a bunch of stuff we're doing inside of Unity that we wouldn't do inside of here. So I'm going to go over to the lighting tab, and by default it's set to photometric. We want to turn that to standard, and then we want to do one of these regular lights in here. The first one I like to put in first is just an Omni, and I know there's light at the end of the hallway, so if I click here, I'm not sure what it does. Put it out in the middle of the boons. That's what it does. So I'll drag it back in real quick and place it in the environment a little bit better. Kind of guessing where that light is. Just, I didn't make the light yet. I wasn't worried about it. So I got this. This is kind of like a gray box version of the world. And if you wanted to, you could change everything to gray. I could just go Control A and say, I want you all to be gray. And now I can get a better feel for the lighting. Anyway, so I have this, and it seems like it's doing something, and I have a couple of settings that it doesn't probably have these circles on there for you, so let me turn these off. Okay, and that's probably what it looks like. So why is it not doing anything? What is it doing, and how do I use this crazy contraption? So what it's not doing is casting light in the environment, and that's because we don't have the light set up inside of this viewport. So if I go to standard and I go to high quality, suddenly I'm getting light. Do you see that? So as I move this light up and down, oops, as I move this light up and down, it'll actually change the lighting values in here. I'm going to go ahead and like that so it's locked. And so I can move it anywhere I want. Just to get a feel for the lighting, right? What I could do is turn on shadows too, and it'll take a second. But it'll give me some nice shadows on the corners and stuff. And then I probably want to do that over here too. Standard, I'll change it to high quality. And then I can check some of the settings inside of here. Like light and shadow settings, I want to make sure they're turned on. I want to make sure it's set to the illumination of the lights in the scene. And that's that. Alright, so the other thing I would probably do is make one more light. I make a skylight and I just throw it right here. What that'll do is just lighten up the environment quite a little bit for me. Oh, it's not on, that's why. There's the brightness, perfect. So I'm going to change this down to 1.5. I think it's enough to make a difference so I get some lighting. And I'm not trying to, like I said, I can make it cast shadows a little bit, but there's really not much to cast. So that's the first things I do is I make it so I can see through it. I make a viewport over here where I can do this, and then I do that. The next thing I do is I separate all the environment objects out from the lighting and everything else, so I can control that how I look at my stuff. So the way I've done it is I have all my lights over here in this lights and camera, and my camera too. So I can just turn them off visually, but they still stay on for my needs. And then I come over here and I say, I separate all the stuff that's not part of the geometry, and I call it non-structural in this case. So it's all the doodads and doohickeys and all this stuff. And then I just make a new tab for them so I can turn them off too. And then I'm just left with the structural stuff. And if you look at this, I say scale placement structural objects. That's because I have still some of these objects have numbers on them, so I can actually make sure the scale when I checked it against the numbers on the internet for standard size stuff is still there. But really what I want to get to is a final geo that looks just kind of like this, which is just one piece of geometry, and that's it. It's not supposed to be perfect by any means. It's probably not even efficient. I'm doing this, and the funny thing is after we do this, we're going to get rid of it. But this is the first step to getting me organized enough to be able to work from it. And at this point, I'd save my max file, which I probably should do. As you can see, I haven't. So I'd save it, and then I delete all the other crap. Just if I need it, I can always come back to a different version of it. One trick, though, that you need to make sure you do is after I delete it, well, here. Actually, I duplicate what I needed and start building the environment out of one piece. So it's all airtight. Then, after I've got it all set up so I like it, and it's just one single polygon set here, and it's all cut up and there's no weird edges or anything, and I've made sure the walls are all straight up and down, all the stuff that we've done before, then I would get rid of the other crap in here and say delete. And what I would do then is I'd save again, but this time I'd name it something different. I'd call it maybe gray boxed environment. Just something to keep me, keep it all the same. Okay, so now I've got my environment. I don't really need this. I can right click and say delete. I have my non-structural objects that should still fit in the same spot. Now what do I do? Well, the next step is to start thinking about how you want to make this modular, and that's what we're doing for the next week.